Hey everyone, welcome back to Casual Cognition. It's been so long since I've made like a face-to-face video that I'm actually super nervous. But hopefully we can just casually talk about this. Okay. Authenticity. In the MBTI community, I feel like there's this huge definition or stereotype. It's literally like both in the definition and in the stereotype, which makes sense. But FI is often defined as authenticity. And that has always bothered me. And it just became increasingly obvious to me that, of course, like FI does not have a monopoly on authenticity. Like, this poor definition, it's led a lot of FJs and TPs to type as FPs. I think it's not as prevalent in TJs because like a lot of people still say that TJs are still authentic. It's just their feelings are a bit lower, but they like the principled INTJ, the principled ISTJ, like they still have their principles, their own values or morals, and they're still authentic in their own way. But then for FJs, no one ever says they're authentic. It's like FJs are love, their harmony, FJ harmony versus FI authenticity. And that's just not true. So a lot of FJs who obviously also relate with being authentic, they end up typing themselves as FPs. And I think with TPs, they're also high introvert judging, so they have a lot of their internal evaluative criteria, right? That's JI, is internal evaluative criteria. So they have a lot of those, and they stay true to those criteria. So obviously they feel super authentic, and that's why a lot of TPs type as FI dominance. I started thinking more about like this authenticity idea, and I think that it has to come from an introverted function. So I looked up the dictionary definition: not false or copied, genuine, real. So when it's copied, it obviously has to be copied from an external source. Like if you were copying the past you, then that, like, no one's gonna say that you're like inauthentic for copying what you did in the past. You have to be copying someone else. So you have to be copying like the external thing, or you have to be copying a movie or the society or something. 3, it says representing one's true nature or beliefs, true to oneself. True to oneself, like to have that be associated with FI. I thought like our culture is just very like consciously valuing FI, or it values the feelings too much. Like, have you guys noticed that doing whatever you feel like, I think that's considered authentic. Like there's no authenticity of logic in popular culture. Like when I think of authenticity, I think of like a Mean Girls movie where like maybe I feel like wearing sweatpants. I feel like wearing sweatpants, so if I don't and I wear a skirt because that's what's like socially accepted, then I'm not being authentic. Because that feeling or that impulse to wear sweatpants, that's me. I think society like overvalues feeling as like in general, as like you are your feelings. And okay, a random side note, I think in meditation you try to disentangle that. You're like, I am not my feelings. But there's no authenticity of logic. Like if you tend to solve problems using statistics, for example, that's your preferred method of solving problems. Generally, people don't say like, wow, what an authentic person, tackling every problem with the power of statistics. But if that's part of who they are, that, them doing that is being true to themselves. I mean, the extroverted functions are also part of who you are, but okay, for the purposes of this video, I'm just gonna talk about the introverted functions, starting from FI because that's just the more natural way people think about authenticity, and then I'll deviate from that. So FI, I decided to call this the authenticity of desire. So desire is kind of complicated. It sounds simple, but it's not just whatever you feel like doing. Like I could feel like not doing homework, but then it's compounded by the desire that I don't want to end up homeless, right? It's like, oh, I want to have a good job, etc. So even though I don't want to do homework, the wanting to have a good job thing, it overrides that. So if you're true to that desire of wanting to have a good job, and like doing homework is a means to that, even though you don't quite feel like doing homework, that in general is still authentic. It's rather like, okay, if I feel like, or if I desire to be a lawyer, for example, okay, maybe not that. Maybe I desire to be an artist, but there's a lot of external pressure, say from my family, from my society, etc., to do something else, like to be a lawyer. Then, and I cave to that, then some people might say that I'm not being authentic. And I would say that to FI, unless you overhaul your desires, unless I convince myself to actually really, really want to be a lawyer, to change my life path like that, that would be inauthentic within the lens of FI. I guess the most famous FI example of this would be like, yeah, if you're at a party and people expect you to smile or to enjoy yourself, but you just, at that point, you don't want to smile. You want to mope. For whatever reason, you want to mope. And yeah, instead of adjusting to societal expectations or the societal atmosphere, you do what you want to do, which is to mope. Yeah, but clearly that's not the only form of authenticity. Okay, now moving on to TI. TI I decided to call the authenticity of rationality. So I feel like that's almost like an oxymoron in society, and it really shouldn't be, because for the FJs and the TPs, what is consistent is their rationality. And by that I don't mean what they believe, like what they believe or what they think is true or what they think is logical. All of those things can change, but the authentic part, this part that stays consistent to themselves, is the way that they arrive at what they believe is logical or what they believe is true. To be more specific, like I'm not a TI person, so it's hard for me to say, but like, for example, if you're trying to decide if something is true and you have this criteria with yourself that you have to read at least 3 studies about it, or the criteria could be that, you know, the majority of studies point in this direction, or you have to actually read the study and see if it logically makes sense before you believe it. Anyway, the way that you arrive at what you believe in, that stays consistent. So figuring out the logical principles or the logical framework or the reasoning behind something before you believe in it. It's not like, oh, my dad told me that the earth was flat, therefore the earth is flat. No, like you have to, but you're not going to completely reject that either. There's like, you go through the same process of reasoning to decide whether it's going to be incorporated into your internal logical framework. And I guess it's like authentic because no matter what, okay, so yeah, for example, like everyone could think one thing, like everyone could think the earth was flat, but the TI user, being authentic to their TI, will not just believe it just because everyone else believes it. They have to find the reasoning, or they have to go through their own personal reasoning process, and that information has to check out before they believe it. So yeah, it's a completely valid form of authenticity. Okay, so now moving on to SI, which I also have, and I do feel like this SI authenticity in myself as well. So I call this the authenticity of history or style. I don't know, pick whichever one you like the best. So style in terms of like, I think that they're very, or taste, yeah, style or taste. Maybe taste is actually better. So they have their own personal style or taste when it comes to objects, and it doesn't really matter what external objects or pressure or force is doing. Like it doesn't really matter what is on trend per se. Like maybe, I don't know, this water bottle is out of style or the shirt is out of style, but the SI person, it's introverted sensing, so they've internalized this object and they've associated it with something, and they've superimposed this object with meaning, right? So that meaning is basically going to stay consistent no matter what else is going on. It doesn't really matter if a million people is wearing shirts like this or no one's wearing shirts like this. The meaning that you put onto it is consistent. Whereas with extroverted sensing, yeah, it totally depends on what is happening with these objects externally. I actually think this might be part of like SI's loyal nature. Yeah, it's a stereotype, but I guess SJs are like stereotyped to be the guardians or like really loyal and protective over people. So people is also part of like the whole external world, external objects. Um, I know I just call like people objects, but they're external things, right? They're concrete and they're external. That's what I mean. So yeah, it's like it doesn't really matter so much if that person like didn't call you on Saturday or they said they call you but they didn't. Yeah, those things matter, but that introverted sensing association, like you've at some point decided that this is your best friend or whatever. So little things like that are not going to change it. It's only like maybe if they keep doing it over and over, then you might actually change your sensory association of that person. You might change your label from friend to acquaintance, for example, or even enemy. But as long as you have that label intact, you're gonna treat them consistently. And okay, speaking of consistency, yeah, the authenticity of history, that has to do with having your own traditions, I guess, having your own personal ways of doing things and your own ways of relating to external objects. Yeah, this is definitely why SJs get that traditional stereotype, but they don't actually have to fit into society or societal traditions. It's more about fitting into their own traditions, aka being consistent with their own selves, with their own past. Yeah, they're consistent with their own past. Not that like they keep doing the same thing over and over, but they're more like slow to change their process to something else. I also think that a lot of times when SI people think of authenticity and identity, it has a lot to do with their past. Even I have that. So I kind of think that, oh, in the past, I was such a shy person, right? So I was like a really shy person. And even though I might want to be outgoing or bubbly or dramatic, it just feels weird to suddenly break away from the past and be that, you know? It's like, oh, people, or I will always think of myself as the shy kid. But now that I've also have history of being like bubbly and outgoing, I think of myself as an amalgamation of those things. And even for me, it was hard to just suddenly change from shy to like a bit more outgoing because I'm like, oh, am I changing myself? Well, I am changing myself, but it's like, am I changing myself? Am I not being true to myself? And I have higher NE, so I imagine for like the SI dominance, it would be even more difficult to, I guess, change those old patterns. And yeah, when you think of yourself and staying true to yourself, the history is a part of it. Like everything I've ever done in the past is really a part of me and it's a part of who I am. Whereas I feel like with the NI users, NI and SE users, the past doesn't really matter as much. Like with the ISFPs, I think what they want or what they envision toward about the future or the future that they're moving towards, that's more who they are. And the past is just like, just whatever, that's just the past. I'm no longer that person. Yeah, a lot of times NISE users say that they've grown and changed over time. So if they were shy and now they're confident, then it's like, yeah, I am that confident person. I don't even recognize the past me. Yeah, I don't even recognize. But for me, every past iteration of myself is part of me. But you know, I'm an INFP, so the SJs out there, people with high SI, you can let me know in the comments if you also relate to that and if you relate to like this authenticity of history or taste. Okay, moving on to NI, which I call the authenticity of philosophy. I don't really know what else to call it. I know that sounds like so awesome, like, ooh, the authenticity of philosophy. And it sounds a little bit similar to the authenticity of desire, but it's actually not Because, okay, for example, a philosophy is an outlook, or so yeah, it's a general outlook or your general meaning of life. So, for example, I don't know, the first thought I had was like nihilism, um, which is almost like an anti-meaning. But anyway, if you have that philosophy, you'll stay true to that. And maybe that's not really a good example because it's kind of a lack of I don't know, okay, I don't know enough about it, but say your philosophy is helping people. Yeah, like your ultimate meaning in life is helping people, or yeah, improving the world, making the world a better place. So you are going to be consistent with that. It doesn't mean that you're going to be helping people 100% of the time, because if you're too tired, then you can't really help anyone. But when you can, you're just going to be as consistent with that as possible. It's like you have this goal or you have this vision. I guess philosophy and vision could be it's slightly interchangeable. I don't know, but you have this vision of who you are or where you want to be in 10 years or how you want to be for the rest of your life. Say you want to be a stoic or a conscientious person. Yeah, even if I don't feel like being conscientious, even if tomorrow I suddenly want to be, I don't know, hedonistic, right? You have to ignore those desires and move on your path, because I'm sure like the NJs, they don't always want to work towards this vision. They might want to just go to a party, but generally they try to be authentic to this philosophy. Okay, I think that is all I have to say. Let me know in the comments what you think about this idea. It's like a really new idea I had. And I thought, oh wow, my first idea in ages, better make a video on it. I really don't want people to only associate authenticity with FI. I see countless websites that say FI equals authenticity, and just, it enrages me. Okay, thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to get me to type you or learn more about the personality types, you can check out our website, empiricalpersonality.com. Bye!